Hello and welcome to another episode of Our Own Devices. This time we have with us another guest, and that's our promise, right? We bring you great guests every time so that you learn new things with every episode. This time with us is Shamal Vallabhjee, who's a sports scientist working with something that's really new on how technology can help you recover. After a workout, after a stressful day, or even after maybe a cricket match. Welcome to the show, Mr. Vallabhjee.
Thank you so much for inviting me. I'm super excited to be chatting about the art and science of recovery.
So, how would you, I'll give you an anecdote. Now, I was at Vegas a couple of years ago at CES, and the entire wellness section was full of massage guns and things you would stick on your back or your leg, which would vibrate. But this seems to be a huge segment now, right? Of technology helping you recover.
Yeah, it is a massive segment. Recovery is a $1 trillion industry. As a
Yeah.
sports scientist, I've been to give you a little bit of background. I've been working with professional athletes for 20 years, and I started off as working in physiology. Sports science is the study of performance. So we're obviously looking at how to get the maximum performance out of a muscle. Now, to get the maximum performance out of a muscle, we need to get it to optimally recover. So we study every aspect of recovery. And professional athletes would probably spend about 70% of their time recovering and only 30% of their time training, because that 70% will dictate the quality of that 30%. What you're seeing and what you're describing at these expos that are coming about is the commercialization or the productization of traditional sciences that we've been using. For example, the massage guns are a productization of trigger point therapy, which is done through reflexology or massage, where we're trying to release a certain type of trigger. Sleep is obviously the most optimal type of recovery. And now we're layering upon that different types of sciences, like vibration science, like percussion science, where we're bringing in micro movements into a muscle, which increases blood flow, and capillary flow, which increases recovery in there. So what you ultimately describing is now the going to market or the mass market productization of an industry that has recovered. And just so you know, I mean, we talk about wellness, but the art and science of recovery as an industry is more than 5,000 years old. Every single thing that we do is based on feeling better, whether it's taking a supplement in Ayurveda or getting a massage or whatever it is doing. Everything is designed to make you feel better. And that's why we are now talking so much about it.
As you said, it's something we have been doing for millennia, right? On how to recover after a lot of things, but it's also been very human led, and you now have technologies sort of figuring out how the fingers worked, or how those pressure points were tackled. So how good is technology when you are replacing human hands, for instance?
Yeah, that's a great question. Technology is an enabler. The technology is as powerful as the person behind that technology. With anything, a scalpel in the hand of a great surgeon can save a life. The scalpel in the hand of someone else can take a life. It's the exact same with any single technology out there, whether it's even a wearable technology like a work device or an Oura ring. It's the practitioner behind that. So what I'm trying to say is that whilst we are taking a product and bringing it to mass market to make the art and science of its recovery, it does not take away from the fact that basic knowledge of understanding of the body needs to be present. Right? What these products have done has eliminated the complexity of what you need to know. So it's taken all the science and packaged it into a beautiful device that any person can do to get a experience out of it. Does that experience replace a qualified therapist? It absolutely does not. Is the product safe? The product is definitely safe to use. Does it work better in the hands of a qualified person who understands the body or a person who invests time in understanding their own body? Yes, it works significantly better, because the way in which you use it and the way in which you apply it to certain types of muscle would increase its sort of increase the results in some shape and form.
So when you're talking about a company like Hyperice, which has now brought in a lot of its product into India, this gap between the human hand and the technology or the massage gun, is sort of bridged by the app, which also tells you what to do, the routine that you should do maybe after a very hectic day. I was fascinated by the kind of routines and how it sort of took you from one part of the body to the other. So is that how you think this gap will be filled? Is it going to get closer to what the therapist would have done? Because otherwise you're on your own with a gun, right? Is this
Yeah.
is this
So
better in that handheld kind of a format?
It's a phenomenal question. So think about the time when you went to see a therapist. You either saw a massage therapist or a physio or a chiropractor at the point when the pain became unbearable. You got to breaking point and then you saw a therapist. What a company like Hyperice has done by creating products like this and using an app with education and content and creating a structured flow is they ensure you never get to breaking point, because they give you a self-care mechanism that eliminates a lot of the tissue damage done through training on a day-to-day basis, meaning which was not there. So previously you were loading until a point where you broke down and
Right.
you needed to see a therapist. Right now what we've done is we've pushed therapists so far down the radar because the self-care is a prevalent thing that needs to come up. But what we are hoping to do through the content that we create is educate the user, into how his body should feel. So one of the main things, talking about technology, I was speaking really interestingly at a data science conference recently, and I was explaining to them that we're seeing a rise in wearable technology and recovery technology, right? But we're not seeing a steady decline in the number of injuries, and we're not seeing a steady decline in chronic disease. So that seems to be a bit of an anomaly, considering that more wearables are going up and more technology is going up for the art of recovery, but the effect of it is not coming down. And the gap between that is knowledge, which is what we've identified at Hyperice and what we're trying to really bridge through the app. And we're hoping that people don't just buy a device and use it in the most simplest rudimentary way that you can, because its applications are so much more deeper. And the more we invest in sort of getting you to become aware, we call it body awareness in Hyperice. Just a simple thing, for example, just standing straight and moving your hips to the left and right, you could become aware of what are the tightness patterns that exist in the abdominals versus the back versus your hip flexors or your glutes. And just that simple awareness that will take you 5 seconds could make the application of the device incrementally more better for you. Right? At the end of the day, it's all about feeling better and improving performance. And that's why we're trying to bring both to the table. We're trying to bring the awareness to the table with product development.
The other thing I wanted to ask you is that, of course, you have the app that sort of bridges the gap, but you still have a lot of people who are maybe not even aware that there are these kind of products out there. How do you make people aware of the fact that you now have technology, and you might be in a place where you have no chance of getting a massage therapist, but then this is something that you can carry with you wherever you go. So how do you make people aware about a new technology like this?
Yeah. So the way to really bring about awareness, and what we've been doing is we've been running a series of workshops, and what we're trying to do is empower it and get it into the hands of the people that are currently in your wellness intervention circle. For example, it could be a massage therapist. We're teaching them, listen, how can you save your hands by using this device here to create a experience? How can your gym instructors or your personal trainers use this to enhance the quality of your movement patterns, help you with recovery, also help you with your warm up as such? They're not just recovery tools, they can be used very, very effectively to open the body up so that the quality of the movement even gets better. It is an awareness cycle that's going on right now. So the more people that use it, the more people that become aware of these things, the more we start talking about pain, the more we start talking about recovery, the more awareness is going to get there. One of the biggest problems is that people are unable to distinguish between good pain and bad pain, right? So that is the biggest problem why there's such a big gap between the number of wearables in the market and the chronic diseases that still exist. Because whenever you start moving, one of the natural things that will happen is you will get stiff, You will get what's called delayed onset muscle soreness. You will have some type of pain. And the end user is unable to distinguish what pain is normal and exercise related versus what is actually something to be concerned about. Now, using this device here, we can keep what is concerned about at bay for a long time. But the person needs to be invested in understanding the difference between pain for us to really move the needle forward. And that's where we're trying to put the pin in the ground, is we're trying to educate people on what is good and what is bad, what are the areas of concern, and what are the pain barriers that you need to push through. Because if you don't push through pain, you're not going to get stronger, you're not going to get fitter, you're not going to get faster. You need that element of resistance has to be present for us to grow.
Even though this as a technology, recovery technology is primarily maybe aimed at people who are athletes, or who are into endurance training and all, but maybe over the past year especially, you would have seen a spike in regular people requiring intervention like this, right? Because you are sitting in front of a laptop for
Of
maybe hours at end. So have you actually seen people take up these kind of devices just for recovery from the work or the stress of day-to-day life?
Absolutely. So that's the beauty of the device. The beauty of the device is that, you don't need to be an expert because we've packed the technology into it. The second myth is that this is for athletes. It's not for athletes. Every single one of us has muscles, and all our muscles need to recover in some shape and form. So it is a device for everyone. But the beauty of everything is in the vibration technology, right? Previously, you needed to get a massage to reduce muscle, to relieve pain, to relieve tension. What vibration technology does is it has a certain level of amplitude. If you do nothing, absolutely nothing, but just keep the vibration on an area of pain, in 10 minutes the pain would reduce. If you are feeling stressed and anxious, we have a device that's called a hypersphere, which is a ball that vibrates. If you just hold that ball in your hand for 10 minutes, your stress level will reduce. Why? Because vibration talks to your neurological system. It talks to the parasympathetic nervous system, which gets you to calm down immediately. So, if you play the game of golf, a good golf coach will tell you, don't swing hard, let the club do the work. Right? It's the exact same thing here. Here, you don't need to do anything. The technology does the work, but you need to have it in your hands and you need to use it. That's it.
And in companies like Hyperice, it's not just about vibration or percussion, right? You also use maybe heat and cold. Is that right?
Absolutely. I mean, we're trying to come full spectrum with respect to recovery. And we've seen for the longest time that ice immersion or contrast baths, which is heat and cold, have been a phenomenal way to increase blood flow. And now we're combining all of this. We're combining percussion, we're combining vibration with heat, with cold. We're even now exploring the use of combination techniques with things like dry needling, which is Chinese medicine. So we're looking at the entire spectrum of recovery and seeing what are the ways in which they complement each other. We're even looking at load management. For example, how much of stress can we put on a muscle which increases its threshold for which it can withstand pain, and how can that become a recovery mechanism as well. So we're right at the cutting edge of recovery science and recovery technology. For a simple thing like you take a gun like a hypervolt, there's not just one. We have 4 or 5 models that provide different levels of stimulus for different type of muscle tissue and different levels of performance as well. Similarly, with the Viper, which is our foam roller, we have 3 or 4 versions in the market that provide a different level of stimulus, different size, portability. So what we're trying to do is understand the needs of the end user and realize that not everyone can withstand the same amount of pressure or the same amount of percussion or vibration or depth of pressure. So we've created a whole range for the person out there. And that's what we try to do. So being at the front end of the science of recovery has been a very exciting space, and the space is only going to explode. It's going to be exploding. By right now, we're looking at application of these sciences. Very soon, we'll be able to measure it. Very, very soon, the technology will move to a space where you can lie on a foam roller and we'll be able to measure the muscle tightness and then give you a prescription of how long you need to do it. The science is evolving at that rate.
You mentioned measuring, which also means that you already maybe have a lot of data on what are the kind of pain points people are literally using the devices on. Has it changed your perception about what are the problems people have? or where they would actually use something like this?
Yeah, well, so certain of the devices are designed to be used more on the bigger muscles, and that's traditionally what we've been doing. So people would focus on the hamstrings, the
Yeah.
quadriceps, the glutes, the lower back, a lot of the triceps and shoulders because of
Mm.
neck pain and posture related. Unfortunately, what happens is the body is only as strong as its weakest link, which means that that's where the body awareness comes in, where I spoke about, where a person needs to realize that it's not the inability of the big muscle that to function that's actually inabilitating you. It's the smaller ones that control the big ones that are doing that, and that's where that awareness comes in terms of patterning with respect to what we are seeing a lot of hamstrings, glutes, calves, quads, back. But what we're trying to create awareness around is telling them that, for example, there are two small muscles behind the shoulder, which are called the infraspinatus and the supraspinatus. If you don't open that and you focus only on your deltoids and your back, right, you'll get some benefit, but the benefit will be incrementally better if you focus on those small muscles. Like if you open your hip flexors whilst you're opening your hamstrings and your quadriceps, you'll find you have a lot more power and a lot more levering in that. So that's what we're doing. And we're trying to, through the app, that's where we're connecting the dots through the app, where we're showing people what they already know, but we're introducing through tips and techniques all of the smaller things that they need to do, because the body is very holistic, and we want it to be approached as a holistic science.
The one last thing I want to ask you, Mr. Vallabhjee, is that in a way, if you ask me, I think this is the democratization of recovery therapy. It's already a very old science. It's a very large segment, but it's also now coming to a point where almost anybody can have it at home. Do you think that's going to have a big long term impact?
Yes, I think it's going to have a massive impact. It's like reading a book. If the book's on your coffee table, you're more likely to pick it up and read it, isn't it? If it's not on your coffee table, your barrier for entry is very high. You need to go to a bookshop, you need to get an Amazon, you need to order something, and the chances of you doing all of those steps before you actually read is far, far higher. So getting the device at multiple price points into every single home is reducing the barrier of entry for a person thinking about recovery in the way it should be. And that is the secret to not just the art and science of recovery, it's the secret to every single thing. Isn't it? When you want to lose weight or you want to become healthy, the first thing they tell you is don't buy junk, right? If you've reduced the barrier of entry to eating healthy, then you will eat healthier. And that's the secret to habit formation as well, is use your environment to help you cultivate habits that you want to cultivate that are in alignment with who you want to become.
Thank you, Vallabhji. It was a fascinating conversation, and this is not the kind of topic that we would usually touch. But this also goes on to say how much technology is percolating into all sorts of things in human life. Thanks a lot for being on the show.
Thank you very, very much. I love the chat. Thank you so much.
You were listening to Our Own Devices with Nandagopal Rajan. We'll be back again next week with another guest and more fascinating conversation. We are everywhere you listen to your podcast.